Welcome back to episode 2 of the Home Stretch podcast, and we're going to be talking today all about how much it actually costs to buy your first home. Now, it's always going to depend on how much the house you're buying costs. That has a huge part to play because obviously the main part is your deposit, and it will kind of depend on whether you go for a 5% or a 10% or even higher. Like if you can go higher than 10%, please do it because the interest rates are crazy. But that's obviously going to have a massive part to play. However, I'm going to go through what it cost to buy our first house, the costs that we had early on, in the middle, and obviously at the end of the house buying process. So hopefully you can maybe learn a little thing or two about how much it actually costs to buy your first home in the UK. So how much did it actually cost for us to buy our very first house? Now, we paid a total of £46,115 to buy our first house. Now, this includes everything from deposits to solicitor fees to survey evaluations to mortgage advisors, everything like that. This is everything bundled up together that you will need, and also includes unexpected costs as well, because we actually had to pay an extra £999 towards our mortgage product fee. Now, we thought this was going to be put onto our whole mortgage, but lastminute.com, about 2 weeks before we were to complete, our solicitor said, oh no, had a mistake. You actually have to pay that up front now instead. We had to pay an extra £1,000 just before we moved in. So that was really fun. But just as a little FYI, you can add this onto the overall mortgage so you don't have to pay it up front like we did. But saying that, if you do put this onto the mortgage, you're obviously going to incur interest fees onto this amount. So realistically, if you can pay it up front, I would personally, that's just like what I would, in my opinion, do and what we done. But if you can't afford that, then put it onto the mortgage and forget about it. Anyways, going back to the start of our house buying journey, what was the first initial costs? What do we have to kind of outlay? That sort of thing. So you're viewing houses, everything's great, everything's fine. You don't have to pay anything in terms of before you even get your offer accepted. So once you decide that you want to buy your first house, the first thing that I would do if I was doing it all again is to go see a mortgage advisor straight away. This is something that we did. I think it's really good and important to find out exactly how much you can borrow, because the last thing you want to do is start viewing houses that are a little bit outside your budget and feeling like you need to stretch it to reach the house prices that you want to go for. So first and foremost, go see a mortgage advisor, get them to work out exactly how much you can afford to pay back monthly, how much you can afford in terms of how much, deposit you're putting down, and just generally getting an idea on how much it actually costs to pay towards a mortgage. Because I'm telling you now, if you've never paid towards a mortgage, it's expensive. Our mortgage right now is like £2,000 a month. So that's £1,000 each between me and Nathan. So at the moment, obviously interest rates are really high, right? I think they're coming down a bit now. I think they're 4.85 now, or maybe a bit higher. I don't know. But we got our mortgage for 5.13% or something like that. And we're fixed into a 2-year mortgage, whatever it's called. I don't know. So we are paying that for the next 2 years. And then when that comes up, we can then remortgage and hopefully the interest rates are a bit lower. But it's just important to know exactly how much you're willing to pay, because £2,000 a month is quite a lot of money. If you're working in a job and you're only getting £1,500 a month, and your mortgage on its own is £1,000, and then you've got your, all of your bills to pay for, all of your expenses yourself, your car, whatever, your travel to work, it adds up so fast. So in terms of our overall spending, we put in £1,500 each into our house account to sort out bills, to sort out council tax, our mortgage. That is someone's whole wage and more. So this is how much it costs right now to have a mortgage and to pay your bills and whatever. It's expensive. It's really expensive. So in general, that's what it's like after like obviously we have a mortgage right now, and that's how much it costs for us to have a house. Now, in saying that, our house was on the market for £425,000. So it's a lot higher than probably like the average right now. We live in Cambridgeshire, so the houses around here generally quite expensive, but we needed somewhere fairly close to London that, Nathan can commute to and from because he works in London. So that was the ballpark of where we wanted to view houses, what we were happy with. So realistically, that's what we can afford. So that's what we've gone for. Rewinding back into initial costs of what it's like to buy your first house. The very first thing that we had to pay for was a mortgage advisor. Now, you can get mortgage advisors for free, and there is a lot of them out there, but we was recommended a mortgage advisor through family friends, so we went with them, and we had to pay £200 up front. Now, we only paid this after our mortgage got accepted. So anything you do before this, you can go and speak to 10 different mortgage advisors if you wanted to, for free. And then eventually they might charge you later down the line. However, you can have initial conversations before. And this is exactly what we did. I think it's good to test out, what each one are offering and the vibe you get with them, because you're probably going to be with them until like when you move house again. So I think it's very important to, vibe with their energy and know that they've got your best interests at heart. So I think shopping around and having a little look at what's out there is important. So mortgage advisors, have a little look. You can get some for free. I mean, you can pay for them too. We did that, and I think it was quite good. £200 we paid, which I don't think is that bad considering we're going to use them in like 10, 15, 20 years time, whatever. So that is the first payment. And yeah, that was probably like a week maybe after we had our mortgage accepted. The next costs that we paid for was our initial solicitor fees. So you'll see probably a lot of people online talking about solicitor fees and saying that they're very expensive, they're high, and they are. Don't get me wrong, they are very high, and it is something you definitely have to factor in. But you have to remember that you don't pay the full amount until you complete. So whether your process lasts 6.5 months like it did with ours, or it lasts for 2 months, or it lasts for 4 months, however long, that is when you're close to completion, that is when you're going to be paying that lump sum of money. The only thing that you pay towards your solicitor fees earlier on in the process is £350, and that's to kind of cover the start of the searches, so to speak. So in terms of solicitor costs and stuff, every solicitor works different. So if you are going through the house buying process and for some reason it doesn't go through, or you don't get the house and it doesn't complete and things like that, I honestly don't know if you still have to pay for those solicitor fees or not. I think you can get certain ones that are like no win, no fee type solicitors, but stupidly, we didn't check that. We didn't see whether or not like our solicitor would charge us if we didn't get the house, which they probably would have done, because it's like, would you do the work and not get paid for it, So we probably would have had to pay that £2,000 in fees even if we didn't get the house. So that's what made it so much more annoying if we didn't get it. So if you have been through the process before and your house process didn't go through, did you have to pay for those solicitor fees? I'm really intrigued. If you have, please let me know. Obviously we haven't gone through that process, so it's hard for me to comment on that. So I'm just going through our process in general and what we went through basically. This was about 2 weeks after our offer got accepted. I went to their offices in person. Now, some solicitors probably do this online. Some, you have to go in person like we did. But I had to bring both our IDs, confirmation of where we lived, and also the money, obviously, to pay it upfront. So this was £350. And after that, we didn't pay any solicitor fees until about 2 weeks before we completed, which was 6.5 months later. Can I just reaffirm that? So we didn't have to pay that massive lump sum of money across quite a few months. So realistically, looking back, we had 6 months worth to save up more money, which was in hindsight, was probably the best thing for us, to be honest. In total, I hope you're ready for this, our solicitor fees was £2,275. Now that is probably a little bit higher than most solicitors, but only slightly. I think you'd be surprised about how, expensive solicitors actually are. And that is also including the £350 that you've already spent like earlier on in the process. So realistically, by the end of the process, we paid like £1,900, something like that. So that's something to bear in mind, because when you come to send your deposit, like a week or 2 weeks before you complete, you have to send along with your deposit all of the solicitor fees, and you need to send it all together. So you have to make sure that you have your deposit money and your solicitor fees ready before you complete. And another little thing, some solicitors, I mean, we didn't go through this personally, but I have heard it. Some solicitors do add certain things onto their fees within the process. So before you even start, you'll get a quote from your solicitors. A very good question to ask them is, if throughout any of the process, would you have to add on extra fees? And if so, what would they be? How much would they cost? And why would you be adding them? I think this is really important, because you don't want to be stung with extra fees that you didn't know you had to pay for. So you want to have it all out, completely black and white. Ask them this like super early in the process, so you know like exactly more or less how much you're going to be paying, because it is a lot of money. And if you've only got 3 months until you move in, then you need to make sure that you have that amount. Next up, we've got the home buyer survey. So I was so confused when we was in the house buying process on searches. And for me, I thought that fell into the general category of searches, and it doesn't. So you get different kind of searches. You get your solicitor's conveyance searches, and that's where your solicitor does, all the land registry stuff. It looks at your boundaries with your house. It looks at the water pipes around the property, if there's going to be any building things happening, and how that can potentially impact you later on down the line. And then you have your home buyers survey. A home buyers survey is basically something that an external person will come to the house that you're buying and do a survey on like the constructural side of things and see if there's anything that you need to be looking out for. Basically, this is something that you have to do yourself, and you don't actually have to do it, but it is highly recommended, especially by solicitors, to have this done, because you don't want to buy a house and then find out, because you didn't have the survey, that the whole internal structure or external structure is buggered, and that's going to cost you tens of thousands of pounds, and you could have easily seen it in a home buyer survey. If I was you and I was doing this all over again from scratch, I would personally sort this out as soon as our mortgage in principle got confirmed. So when the bank comes out and values the property, which they do it online usually now, and this is a few days after your mortgage gets accepted, you would then go and contact local surveyors. So have a little look on Google, have a look at good reviews or personal recommendations, that sort of thing, and get them to come out to the property, do a survey, and then you'll basically get this full report, right? And I swear our report was like 60 pages long, and they'll go into like proper detail about the property, on things to look out for, things that are eroding, certain plants. I know there's the thing with like Japanese knotweed and stuff like that, but like they'll look at everything and let you know things that could potentially be an issue in the future. And if there's something that crops up that is like huge and it's like a big red flag, you could potentially then go back to the estate agents and say, look, the home buyer survey come up with this and we're a bit worried about it. Can we kind of liaise and negotiate with the sellers? And then even though the price is confirmed, you could potentially negotiate the price down. That is possible. So that is an option if the house is like not good, and after you get a home buyer survey. So in a home buyer survey, you get 3 levels. I won't go into too much detail, but you have a level 1, a level 2, and a level 3. So a level 1 is when the house is more or less a new build. You don't really need to do a full detailed survey of it, and these are just a basic check of the house, and it costs, I think, between £300 and £400. A level 2 survey is the one that most people go for. It's a bit more detailed. You get a lot of information. Like when we got ours back, I was a bit like, whoa, we know everything about the house now. So I would highly recommend a level 2. So they look at things like damp and repairs and stuff potentially that you need to do. So ours cost £625, and it will cost anywhere really between 600 and 650. It will depend where you live. It will depend on the person that you go with. Generally, it's going to cost around that. And this is a cost that you will have to pay fairly close to when you have your offer accepted. And for us, we got this done very early in the process. I'm glad we did, because we took initiative, we were proactive, and we got it done. We sent the survey results to our solicitor. He had a look at them. He was fine with it. And your solicitor will be able to help, understand what it means and whether you can go back potentially with a counter argument on the price. Really work with your solicitor on whether you can move the price down, because you can definitely do that. And then a level 3 is going to be for houses that are a lot older. So this is probably anywhere that 1950s houses, that type of thing, things that are very old that could have a lot of issues. This is obviously going to be a bit more expensive. I think it's upward towards £1,000, but it's going to give you peace of mind onto understanding the structure of the house and how bad things might look, because you might walk around a house and view it and think it's the perfect house for you, until you have a professional go and have a look at the house and it's oh no, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be doing here. So that is definitely something to keep an eye out for. But in general terms, take a proactive approach and get this done early, because you're showing that you're willing to put in the work a little bit. Don't leave this till last minute, because it could delay your house buying process and it will just be annoying. And then on to the next one, which is deposit. So this is obviously the biggest amount of money that you're putting towards this house. And again, like I said before, it's going to depend on how much your house is. So if it's £200,000 and you want to put a 10% deposit, that's £20,000. If you're looking at a £400,000 house and a 10% deposit, that's £40,000. So it's going to depend on how much money you've got saved versus how much money you're going to have also by the end of this process. Now, there's this question mark onto whether you need the full deposit when you put your house offer in. And we had our full deposit ready, and if we, completed a week after, we would have been able to. But I think a lot of people are in that kind of mindset of, well, I might not have it right this second, but I might have it in a month or 2 months. Can I look for houses? And realistically, the answer is no, because if you can't afford your deposit right now, you shouldn't really be looking at houses. But in saying that, if your delayed house buying process takes a long time, if it takes a whole year for it to come through, that's a whole year's worth of savings. So your solicitor will usually ask, as well as your mortgage advisor, by the way, for proof of funds fairly early on in your process. So I think ours was asked within a couple of weeks after our mortgage in principle was confirmed. I think it was a few weeks after the house got approved. So you can have a house offer approved on the house without actually having proof of funds, but don't do that, because if you're out of pocket now, who's to say that you're going to be struggling when you're paying for a mortgage? So just be smart with your money, okay? I know you're itching to get into a house, and I know the feeling, I get it. And you also want to be smart with your finances. You don't want to jump into this long-term commitment of paying for a mortgage when you can't actually have your deposit here ready and now. Do you know what I mean? So just be a bit smart. That's all I'm saying. When it comes to deposits as well, so we both had LISAs, a lifetime ISA. So I had one and so did Nathan. Nathan had his for 5-6 years. He was saving for ages. That's fine. But for me, I had my LISA for only I think 6 months at this point. And when we were looking at taking the money out of our LISA, I actually couldn't take mine out and I couldn't use mine. Basically, when you set up a lifetime ISA and you're putting that money towards your house, you have to have it for at least 12 months from when you open that account. So I actually couldn't touch my money and put that towards my house. It was so annoying because I had an extra £1,200. I basically lost 1,350 quid, which in hindsight, I didn't really lose that money. I only lost maybe £250, which was slightly annoying. However, I should have read the T's and C's and I didn't. So this is a sign to you that if you have a lifetime ISA open right now, to check when you opened it, if you are looking at houses, and make sure that it's in like over a year. Otherwise, you won't be able to use the government bonus, which is like 25%, which is huge, into your house deposit. So basically, how a lifetime ISA works, if I can remember correctly, for every pound you put in, they put in 25p, and they can put in up to £1,000 a year. So if you had a lifetime ISA open for 5 years, that could be £5,000 put towards your deposit, which is actually so much money. When you put everything into perspective, like £5,000 could go so far, and write off your solicitor fees and then put £3,000 into your deposit, which would be amazing. So if I was you and you can save up £4,000 a year, then a lifetime ISA is for you. So have a look into it. They are really, really good. I think I went with Moneybox and my boyfriend Nathan went with Starling maybe. But they're very, very good with helping you get on the property ladder. The only other time that you can use the government money is when you retire. So I have a long wait to get that bonus money, which is fine. But here we go. We live and we learn. We learn to read the T's and C's. So please do not make the same mistake as I did. And please read the T's and C's. Another cost with buying your first house is a mortgage product fee. Now, this is basically a fee from the bank that you have to pay because you're getting a mortgage out with them. And this can either be put on your mortgage or you pay it upfront. Now, ours with Halifax was £999. We thought that this was getting put onto our mortgage, and about 2 weeks before we completed, our solicitor was like, oh, we made a mistake. You actually have to pay that fee upfront. And we were like, oh, we thought that was getting put on the mortgage. And they were like, no. We were like, okay. So we had to pay an extra £1,000 just before we moved in. So that was really great. But it's better to pay this outright than it is putting it onto your mortgage, because that's going to incur interest costs. You don't really want that. You want to just pay it off outright if you can. And then that'll be it done, and you can just forget about it, because you got to think over the course of like however long you have your mortgage, that's going to incur interest costs, which we don't want that. We want to just pay it off and that'll be that. So that is definitely something to be, wary about, and speak to your solicitor about this. Make sure, you know if it's going on your mortgage or not. The last thing you want to happen, which is what happened to us, was you get stung right at the last minute. You have to pay an extra £1,000. Cheers. Okay. So speak to your solicitor and make sure that you can either pay it up front or you put it onto your mortgage. Then we've got buildings and contents insurance. Now, you don't need to sort this out until the day you exchange. And this is obviously like really close to when you complete. We had a little look around and we found one for £216 for the whole year. I can't actually remember where we got it from, but look on Go Compare, look on comparison websites and find the best one for you. It's obviously going to depend on how much your contents costs, the house, and etc. etc. Again, if you can pay this up front, it's obviously cheaper than if you pay it monthly, but whatever works for you, you just have to go with that. We paid this on the day we exchanged and it was £216. So this was 6.5 months later after our offer got accepted. So it wasn't an upfront cost, but it was a cost you have to kind of think about when you get closer to complete. Next up is stamp duty. Now, we didn't have to pay any stamp duty. We were so lucky. We just got in like a month before they changed everything in March of 2025. So now it's gone down. So it used to be £425,000 and above you pay stamp duty on, even as a first-time buyer. So I think a misconception of stamp duty is that if you're a first-time buyer, you don't pay stamp duty. That is not the case. If now you have a house over £300,000 as a first-time buyer, you have to pay stamp duty on that, which is so annoying. It used to be $425 before the changes came through in March of this year, but that's changed now. So if you're looking at houses above £300,000 and you're a first-time buyer, you are going to have to pay stamp duty on that house, which is super annoying. And it's obviously going to depend on how high priced the house is, and depending on how much stamp duty you're going to have to pay towards that. So have a little look online. You get free calculators. Just type into Google stamp duty calculator and you'll be able to find out how much you'll have to pay. That is another cost that you'll have to take into consideration, and you'll pay this when you pay for your deposit and things like that too, I think. I've not been through it, so I don't know, but I'm pretty sure you only pay that up until when you pay your deposit and things like that. And then last but not least is moving costs. Now, we were very fortunate and very lucky to have the most amazing family that helped us move all of our stuff for free. And we didn't need big moving vans. We didn't have loads of furniture. We didn't have any furniture, actually. We ordered things to the house and it actually came here to the seller's house before we moved in. So they were so kind to take in our furniture that we ordered prematurely. So we didn't pay anything towards our moving costs, which is obviously great. But I'm pretty sure if you're moving a lot of furniture and stuff, you can probably hire a van for like £100 a day, maybe. Don't quote me on that because I've not had a look myself. But that is obviously another thing that you have to think about if you're moving house. So here's what I'd go back and tell myself on day one of buying my first house is, number one, track everything on a spreadsheet, because you don't understand like the little things that you're paying for and how much they actually add up. Budget for £5,000 more than what you expect, because apart from everything that you have to pay towards your moving costs, your deposit, your solicitor fees, you have to think about stuff in your house. Like, this is stuff in my house right now: couch, pillows, rug, everything. It costs money. So if you don't have any of that right now, you need to factor that in. At least £5,000, at least, because mattresses, beds, couches, it adds up. It's really sad, but it adds up. So please be prepared, and don't be afraid to ask your solicitor earlier on what fees are due when. So, you know, what payments are due, when do I need to pay this, when do I need to pay that. They will be obviously upfront and honest with you, but they've got so many other clients that they're dealing with that they're not going to probably tell you the timeline of everything in like a beautiful way. Like, if you have questions, just ask your solicitor and they will happily answer them for you. Another thing is get your LISA right, because I obviously didn't. So please be wary and open like with the information that I've given you on that, because with my personal experience, obviously I lost a bit of money. So don't be me, basically. And the final point is just to shop around, like shop around mortgage advisors, shop around solicitors, like just find someone that works with you and works with your energy. Wow, that was a lot of numbers and a lot of rambling about money. Buying your house is very expensive. So people do go into it thinking that it's not going to cost as much as they think, but the numbers add up. And I think it's always nice to be understanding and knowing exactly how much things do cost, because they are expensive, but they are manageable. If you understand how much things are, you can then, in your mind, account for that. So I really hope this episode gave you a little bit of clarity in terms of buying your first house and how much things do cost. If you did find this episode valuable, please do let me know. So if you have any questions about anything to do with the house buying process, please let me know. If you have a friend right now that's looking at houses and you think they'd find this valuable, please send it to them, because we're all in this together and I'm here to share things that I've learned along the way, and hopefully that will help you and people you know too.